Anybody else getting worried about this? The Tom Holland Spider-Man films are among some of the most consistent films in the greater MCU pantheon, not just critically or more specifically commercially, but the love from fans over the years for Tom's portrayal of the web-slinger has been staggering. Considering Tom's been at the center of Sony and Marvel's tug-of-war since he signed on in 2015, a lot of sympathy has gone his way over the last decade, as the power struggle for the character's direction frustratingly put him in the middle. Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire dealt with something similar in their film series, and as a fan that always made me upset, because I think all three actors understand the essence of why this character is important. Spider-Man is so much more than his place in film iconography. There's a deep respect that Holland, Garfield, and Maguire hold for the character of Peter Parker, as well as his relatable struggle to balance everything in life. Whether that's school, work, family, love, friendships, he's the picture-perfect example of trying to hold everything together while also doing the right thing. But then there's the hero aspect. Spider-Man thrives in comic stories where he learns the true pain of sacrifice and consequences, showing that even when doing the admirable thing, his whole world can come crumbling apart. And while we haven't entirely seen a ground-level version of this Peter and John Watts trilogy, since he's dealt with everyone from high-powered arms dealers to multiverse-skipping maniacs, however, we have seen him deal with this internal conflict. Homecoming found him learning what it means to actually be a hero and make responsible decisions. Far From Home illuminated the consequences of his reckless decision-making and made him mature far younger than he should have. And No Way Home saw him finally embracing the role of the city's servant, sacrificing his joy for the sake of others' safety and peace, especially his loved ones. The final scene of that film is perfection in its ability to wipe the slate clean for Peter and give us a version of him that didn't lean on the bells and whistles of the MCU. But it made almost $2 billion.
I'm not sure how I got here. Has to do with Spider-Man, I think.
Sony has been trying to launch their Spider-Man-less universe since 2018, and even tried ripping Tom away from Disney to get full exclusivity, which didn't get the best response. And although the Venom movies are a cheesy blast, Morbius and Madame Web just suck so much. Having this adjacent fledgling universe building without its central character present has always been weird, so the upside of this is we keep on getting shitty solo movies like El Muerto. But the downside is that Sony's going to try and push these characters into an MCU film, which seemed far more likely now that Craven's latest trailer made it look like a fan-made movie. I'll get into the multiverse and how this isn't exactly just a Sony issue, but it's clear that the studio wants a second No Way Home, so I don't exactly trust that they won't attempt to push Garfield and Maguire to return again. I wouldn't be surprised if Tom Hardy cameos, or if some of the characters that they were planning to do a solo movie on just randomly appear in the mix. And because of this constant abuse of Spider-Man's rogues gallery, we're seeing this impact our Spider-Man in real time. Tom Holland was recently on a podcast and he stated that the creative ideas and pitches around Spider-Man 4 are, quote, excellent, but the script needs work, and while that doesn't seem like much, I think we could kind of read between the lines here. He spoke about him and Zendaya jumping around the room in excitement over what was on the page, which tells me that there's a ton here that'll blow fans away, and I'm in favor of that. It's bound to have spectacle, and it's bound to play on those themes about what makes a neighborhood Spider-Man a neighborhood Spider-Man. And hey, we might even get a Daredevil link-up and a Kingpin subplot. However, when the rumors start spilling out that it's a street-level film with multiversal elements, that screams to me that Sony is being the loudest in the room, and possibly doing everything that they can to get Tom in the black suit through inorganic means. Which again is a disservice to the star of the film, because he wouldn't do it unless he saw the appeal of the fans who relate to Peter and his consistent strife. Yet Sony is just incapable of distancing themselves from the more is more approach. So this might be the time, like Spider-Man 3 or The Amazing Spider-Man 2, where it's just a little bit too much and it comes back to kick him in the ass. Except it's not just them that's the problem.
New mask. Same task.
The flip side of this coin has everything to do with Kevin Feige. Avengers Doomsday was just announced in the last few months to be preceding Avengers Secret Wars, and Robert Downey Jr. is returning to the MCU to play the big bad of the multiverse saga, Doctor Doom. And though this is clearly a pivot into something that's a lot more palatable for Disney investors than a Kang storyline, I'm not too sold on it. Reed Richards and Victor Von Doom have a historic rivalry in the comics, so the fact that Robert Downey Jr. is back gives me pause on how that storyline will be handled. But moving aside from that, the joke posts about Spider-Man removing Doom's mask and seeing that it's Robert Downey Jr. and saying Mr. Stark, that really got under my skin. Because unironically, I feel like that's what they're going to do. Feige definitely has a plan to adapt Battleworld and reboot the 616 timeline to reboot the MCU. And as a fan, I think that's a brilliant way to write yourself out of this convoluted mess. Deadpool and Wolverine made the concept accessible, and having Downey back will no doubt do the same. Except that puts Spider-Man 4 in an uncomfortable position. Shang-Chi director Destin Daniel Cretton, who was formerly set to direct Avengers: The Kang Dynasty, is rumored to be helming the new Spider-Man, and I think that's a terrific decision. His approach to hand-to-hand combat and overall geography of action and style is something that a college-aged Peter would desperately need for a shakeup. Just no dragons or fantastical stuff, please. And if you couple that with No Way Home and how it sets us up for a fourth installment that could tie into Daredevil Born Again and the Kingpin storyline, I'd say that every piece is there for this to be a back-to-basics, bare-bones Spider-Man movie. Is that what we're gonna get? Sadly, no. Because Feige knows that while he can't stop Sony from imprinting their influence all over these films, he also can't ignore the expedited timeline of Secret Wars. So the setup for Tom being a major player in those Avengers storylines, that needs to happen now. And that means at best we're getting a Peter that's emotionally grown from his trauma but has to battle some multiversal villains. But at worst, his past losses, like Tony's death, are still going to define him and he has to deal with multiversal villains. And that's not okay. Tom mentioned in his podcast appearance that it's difficult to fit a film like this into an overarching MCU storyline, and I don't doubt that for a second, because the lead time that they've had to do this is far shorter than they've ever had. How are character arcs going to be nurtured properly if they're not given the room to breathe? And the world in which they're attempting to grow is constantly evolving because of what's needed for Doomsday. Obviously, this is nothing new for franchise filmmaking, but where I'm worried about this movie is that the Doomsday decision has been in the works for maybe a year. We haven't seen Doom yet, and we likely won't until the Fantastic Four. Yet if we're going to have to deal with a mix of Sony's multiversal needs and Marvel's multiversal needs, there's no room for a Spider-Man movie there. And I think that's the work that Tom is referring to here. Because yes, I'm sure there's a ton of great stuff that they're going to put on screen and that it's going to be amazing for us fans. But does any of that matter if it's not speaking to the ethos of what Spider-Man is to his fans?
I was in the Avengers.
The Avengers?
Yeah.
That's great!
Thank you.
What is that?
Spider-Man 4 might be a case of too many cooks or too much oversight, or it might be a huge win that no one saw coming. But if I had to put my money on it right now, I'd say that we're looking at something that's going to be way too cluttered for its own good, and that could drive a significant star like Tom Holland away from this character that he loves playing. And that would be a shame, because I feel like we finally got a chance at an iteration where he didn't have the MCU or Sony holding his hand. So I guess my biggest wish for him as this character is that he gets to finally stand on his own. That being said, I hope I'm wrong, and I hope we get some more positive updates soon. Alright, that's all I got. See ya!